Have you ever heard someone from Lagos or Nairobi sound almost Filipino? Not because they tried to imitate anyone, but because their tone, their warmth, and their rhythm carried that same unmistakable melody of kindness. What if I told you that across Africa today, millions of young people are unknowingly speaking English the Filipino way? Not British, not American, Filipino. Sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? But wait until you hear how it all began, with one man named Iyo. Iyo was 53 when it happened, a soft-spoken English teacher from Ghana. For 3 decades, he taught pronunciation and grammar in dusty classrooms. He told his students that proper English came from London or Washington. But deep down, he knew something was missing. His students sounded polished, but not human. They could write business letters, but struggled with real conversation. Iyo noticed a disconnect between the formal English he taught and the vibrant community life outside. The language felt foreign, transactional, not a medium for genuine connection. Watching his students laugh in Twi or Ga, then stiffen in English, he wondered, was this the price of global language? One quiet morning in Ghana, the golden light poured through Iyo's small kitchen window. He sat with his usual cup of tea, the radio humming faintly in the background. Scrolling through his old laptop, he stumbled upon a video, a Filipino call center trainer speaking about something called empathy in pronunciation. That phrase stopped him cold. Her voice was soft yet steady, confident yet kind. There was something magnetic about her, not in her accent, but in her warmth. She said, "When Filipinos speak English, we don't just focus on grammar, we focus on feeling." Her words echoed in his mind. Feeling? He had spent 30 years teaching pronunciation drills, sentence erection, and grammar charts, but never once feeling. Iyo leaned back, stunned. He played that video again and again. Each time, he noticed something new. The rise and fall of her tone, the compassion behind her pauses, the gentle way she said, "Thank you." It was as if English, for the first time, had a heartbeat. The next step was clear. He had to see it for himself. And that morning, Iyo realized he had not been teaching a language. He had been teaching a system. He wanted to teach a soul. Weeks later, Iyo did something no one expected. He sold his old motorcycle, gathered his savings, and booked a ticket. Destination, Manila. Not as a tourist, not as a teacher, but as a student willing to start over. When he stepped off the plane, the air felt different. Warm, humid, and alive with sound. Jeepneys painted in bright colors roared by, children laughed near a sari-sari store, and everywhere he turned, someone was smiling. It was chaos, but gentle chaos. He listened to people speaking English in markets, coffee shops, classrooms. The accents were not Western, they were something better, sincere. Every "good morning, sir" felt like a handshake of respect. Every "thank you, ma'am" carried real care. Filipinos, he realized, didn't copy English. They transformed it. They made it soft, human, and full of heart. Every po and opo added layers of tenderness no grammar book could ever teach. And for the first time, Iyo felt what it meant to belong to a language. One afternoon, in a cozy cafe in Quezon City, a barista placed a cup before him and said with a genuine smile, "Here's your cappuccino, sir. I hope it makes your day better." Iyo froze. Such a simple sentence, yet it carried kindness like a melody. He took a sip and felt tears welling in his eyes. He thought, this is what English has been missing. It wasn't about accent perfection or vocabulary size. It was about intention. Language wasn't a competition. It was a connection. He began to listen closely wherever he went, to teachers in classrooms, agents in call centers, even strangers in parks. Everywhere, he heard one thing: empathy woven into every syllable. He realized English in the Philippines was not just a means to communicate. It was a bridge between hearts. The spark in their eyes mirrored Iyo's first discovery. And from that moment, Iyo decided he would carry this warmth back home. Iyo spent weeks shadowing Filipino educators, trainers, and call center agents. He sat in classrooms where teachers didn't shout, they inspired. He watched agents speak to foreign clients with patience and grace, never losing composure. One trainer told him, "We teach English, sir, but we teach it with heart. because a kind tone can change someone's day. Io took notes like a student again, his pages filled with new words: empathy, humility, sincerity. He learned how Filipinos adjusted their tone to comfort others, how they used laughter to lighten tense calls, and how even mistakes were handled with gentleness. That night, he wrote in his journal, "The Philippines doesn't just teach English, it teaches humanity, disguised as a language class." And with that line, Io knew his life as a teacher would never be the same again. When Io returned to Ghana, his students were waiting eagerly, expecting grammar drills and textbook lessons. Instead, he wrote on the chalkboard, "English is not how you speak, it's how you make people feel." The classroom went silent. He played recordings of Filipino speakers, calm, warm, and respectful. His students listened intently, realizing something profound. They felt those voices. He began teaching differently. Tone before grammar, empathy before accuracy, intention before perfection. At first, some laughed. "Sir, this isn't the British way." Io smiled. "No," he said softly, "it's the human way." And slowly, the laughter turned into admiration. His students began to speak softly, kindly, purposefully. It was the birth of something new, a movement of warmth wrapped in words. Word of Io's new teaching style spread faster than he could ever have imagined. In classrooms, teachers began whispering, "Have you heard about the Ghanaian man teaching English with emotion?" Soon, curious students from nearby towns came to see for themselves. They expected drills and corrections, but instead, they found a man who spoke gently and listened deeply. Io would tell them, "When you speak, let your words hug the person you're talking to." The first batch of students started mimicking that tone of kindness. Their pronunciation softened, their words carried care. They didn't just say, "Good morning," they said it with warmth. Parents began to notice the difference. Children came home speaking not louder, but kinder. And then, something unexpected happened. Local businesses reached out to Io. "Sir," one manager said, "our customer service staff sound too mechanical. Can you teach them the Filipino way?" Io smiled. "I can teach them the human way," he said. What started as a classroom lesson turned into a movement. Workshops spread across the country. Soon, Io's students were teaching others, and others were teaching more. A ripple of empathy moved through Ghana, and then beyond. It wasn't about perfect grammar or accent imitation anymore. It was about sincerity. It was about connection. Across cities, something beautiful was happening quietly. Not through protests or slogans, but through tone. The revolution was not shouted in the streets. It was spoken softly in living rooms, classrooms, and call centers. And Io, once an ordinary teacher, became the messenger of a new kind of power. Not the power to convince, but the power to care. From Ghana, the message traveled like the wind, unseen, but unstoppable. In Kenya, a young vlogger named Daniel discovered Io's teaching videos and uploaded his own, "How Filipinos Taught Us to Speak with Kindness." It went viral overnight. Millions watched as Daniel described how a nation 7,000 kilometers away had changed the way Africans viewed English. His comment section overflowed. "Bro, I tried it. My clients were happier. I used this in my interview. The HR said my voice felt calm." In Nigeria, large call centers began experimenting with empathy-based communication. Supervisors noticed something remarkable. Complaint calls that used to end in anger now ended with laughter. Clients began saying, "You sound friendly. You sound Filipino." Tanzania followed, then Uganda, then South Africa. Io's lessons had become a cultural bridge between continents. It wasn't imitation anymore. It was inspiration. The Filipino way had evolved into a global voice of kindness. One journalist called it the soft power of the Philippines. An African teacher said, "We didn't just borrow their accent, we borrowed their heart." When Io read those words, he smiled quietly to himself. The seed he once planted in a small classroom had grown into a forest of voices, each one carrying empathy across the airwaves of Africa. The Filipino warmth, once just a tone in a YouTube video, had become a philosophy reshaping the way an entire generation spoke to the world.